Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday evening update on this November 29th, 2009. This is, of course, the show to get all your news and views of life extension from around the world and chat with researchers and advocates. Yeah, you can chat with our guest tonight if you participate in the IRC text chat that goes along with the show. In case you're a new viewer tonight, as we go along in the interview with our special guest, you can ask any questions that might happen to come along, come pop into your mind, and I will review the questions as we're going along and see if we got any good ones out there. So have those questions ready. And our guest for tonight is Felicia Nimue Ackerman, professor of philosophy from Brown University. We'll be getting to our guest in just a minute. I want to let you know, though, after our special guest tonight, our interview, we do have a little bit of news to talk about, as is typical. I've got some great news about some fundraising efforts for the Institute and, let's say, life extension efforts in general. That'll be coming up after the interview, as well as the latest on conferences that'll be coming up that you might be interested in attending, and an update on our laser ablation research. Yeah, that is getting going and getting interesting, and over the next month or so we should really start to see some data from that research that the Institute did raise some funding for. Of course, many of you here, most of you here are here for our interview tonight with our special guest, Felicia Nimue Ackerman, professor of philosophy from Brown University. And at this point, I would like to welcome Felicia Nimue to the show. Hello.
Thank you. I'm here, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here tonight. You know, on this show, as typical, we'll have a lot of interviews about nutrition and science and research that's going on in life extension, but perhaps we neglect sometimes the philosophical aspects of life extension or the bioethics. And for that reason, hey, it's wonderful to have you on tonight as our guest. And for those of you, for those in the audience who might not be familiar with you, could you give us just a little brief background of where, what you've done in your life and then your professional career?
You'll live to be 100. Now, isn't that just fine? It's not enough, said Nettie, since now I'm 99. This is a poem of mine that was most recently published last Thursday under the title Nettie and Her Doctor. Like Nettie, I think that no finite life is long enough. For the long run, I advocate research toward an unlimited lifespan, as does this Institute. For the short run, I advocate enabling sick old people and terminally ill people to extend their lives by aggressive medical treatment when that is what they want. I oppose the conventional wisdom that these people should be counseled into foregoing the extra days, weeks, months, or years that such treatment might provide. As a liberal and a bioethicist, I am trying to end our society's eagerness to get sick old people and terminally ill people to bow out quickly. As a 62-year-old, I am hoping to succeed before I become a sick old person myself. In addition to poems, I write short stories, philosophy and bioethics papers for professional journals and anthologies, letters to editors, and a monthly op-ed column. A substantial number of these pieces deal with life extension. For example, I have had about 125 letters in various sections of the New York Times. About 25 of these letters concern life extension, usually in the sense of aggressive life-prolonging care for the dying, since this issue comes up much more often in the popular media than the issue of an unlimited lifespan or even of a greatly extended one. But I discuss the latter issue in a long paper in the Oxford Handbook of Bioethics. I also teach bioethics seminars at Brown, where I am a professor of philosophy. Of course, in my seminars, I try to help students develop their own views about life extension, not to get them to adopt my views. I want to end by stressing that at least end the introduction by stressing that I am a writer and bioethicist, not a scientist. I am eager to discuss ethical issues about life extension, but if you have questions concerning technical details about the prospects for scientific breakthroughs in this area, ask somebody else.
Okay, well, hey, thank you for that warning. Yes, if you weren't aware, yes, a professor of bioethics and philosophy and not into the research end of life extension, but wonderful introduction there, Felicia Nimue. I was wondering, now, you claim, you state that you're an advocate for life extension, and I was wondering if there was a distinct point in your life when you began to favor life extension, or was it a gradual process, or something do you think you've always had in you?
I have favored it as long as I can remember. As a lifelong atheist, I think this is the only life we've got, and I think it's terrible that it's ever going to end. I remember when I was a child, somebody once asked me, even though he knew I was not religious, what biblical character I would most be interested in emulating, if any, and without a moment's hesitation, I said, Methuselah.
Ah, right. Well, and that brings me to a question that I noticed I think you have discussed before, and many people who are advocates for life extension happen across, is that it does seem that there is a certain type of person that accepts life extension or sees that as something valuable for society and the individual, and everyone else seems to be, they seem to have to be dragged kicking and screaming to come to that conclusion. Have you found that as well?
I actually haven't known enough people who favor unlimited life extension to make generalizations about them, unfortunately. It seems not to be a very common view in my circles.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that because many of us at the Institute and many other organizations that are pro-life extension, we hang out together, talk with people, researchers, and it seems as though within the little circle of friends, there are quite a few people, obviously, who would like unlimited life extension. But in academia, it seems kind of odd, I would say, that perhaps there aren't more people that are open-minded toward more radical life extension, and you find that as well. You say in your circle of friends that...
well, no, many of my friends have views somewhat like mine.
Oh, okay.
In bioethics, the view does not seem to be very common. I've done no surveys, but it's certainly very easy to cite a lot of eminent bioethicists who have all sorts of reasons why it would be terrible if we lived too long.
Yeah.
In general, I think they're very bad reasons, and they're reasons I attack in the papers that I mentioned.
Sure, and you did attack many of those arguments that just, to me, probably to you, and to many members of the audience tonight, do not seem all that valid for, reasons why not to pursue life extension, such as overpopulation or stagnation, or my favorite, boredom. As if I mean, I know these are they don't seem very valid. Have the kind of the secular side of that argument, have you seen anything new come up recently besides the standard overpopulation argument or aging is natural, the boredom argument? Has anyone come up with anything new to say, well, we can't have life extension because of X?
No, it's mainly the arguments that I discussed in the paper, but after all, the paper isn't very old. It was just published a couple of years ago. They're extremely, really sort of shockingly poor arguments. I mean, the idea that you would get bored if you lived too long makes me inclined to reply, well, if you have so few inner resources that you would get bored, I won't force extra life on you, but for those of us who realize that there's an endless amount of things in the world to learn and enjoy, and not just higher pleasures, you can also be chocolate all the time, too. Don't tell us not to live too long because you would get bored, is what I'm inclined to say to someone who says that.
Yes, hey, that's a great argument. I'm happy to hear that tonight. And also, someone related to that, to what we've just been speaking of, someone in the audience asked about, and something that you mentioned in your intro there, about the fact that it seems many people are pressuring the old and sick to already hurry up and die. And
that is something really alarming, both in the popular media and in bioethics. In fact, Daniel Callahan said approvingly that high-tech treatment for the dying is universally decried these days, and he seemed to think that was a good thing. There are loads and loads of examples from the media of people talking about how wonderful death is and how wonderful it is to accept death. I can actually give a lot of examples because this is just so common. It's just terribly alarming, I think. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know